Documentation and design is never a static process. It's always dynamic, changing on the fly, and needing to make amendments in quick time. So what I'm going to start this class with is an example of picking up from where we left off in our first tutorial. So this door was an 820 door as depicted, and you'll see that it's 820 if I draw these lines up from the inside of the door jamb. So in other words, the leaf itself is 820, while the opening will be plus whatever the door width is, or the door jamb width, which in most instances is between 40 and 50 mil, something along those lines. Now in the last class we drew this incorrectly at 720. This process is intentional in that it's to show you how you can modify doors, blocks on the run, and modify your design on the run, because this will not be an uncommon occurrence. So opening up where we left off, there's a couple of other items I've added here since the last class, which I'll take you through shortly, is the door. So let's start with rearranging this door correctly. So this is already an 820 door. I've fixed this up, but I think I can actually make this a bit cleaner again. So I'm going to click on the door, and because it's already a block, it all highlights. That's fine. And what I can do is I'm going to just double click on the block. So I'm going to double click on the block. Comes up with this little window here. It says edit block definition, 820 door plan block. Now this is a different block to what I had in the last class, but nonetheless same thing applies. In your case it will be the 720 door that we created in the last class. I'm going to click OK, and it's going to open up to this new area, which is like a gray screen. This is the block editor, and you'll see that we now have a new tab in AutoCAD that's called block editor, and the ribbon looks quite different. There's a lot of different stuff in here. The overall premise still applies. Nothing fundamentally changes. We're still modeling or drawing 2D line work, but we're now in a block environment. You can see if I zoom out, there's nothing else in here other than the door. And it works the same as anything else. If I click on the home tab, I can go to my layers and draw on the layers and etc. It all works well. I'm actually going to delete all this, and I'm going to start again. Let's do this cleanly and correctly. So I'm going to start with my A door layer as we did in the last class, but this time I'm going to start with a polyline. And I'm going to go up 820, across 35 mil, down 820 and across 35 mil, and hit spacebar or escape. So there's our door leaf. The next thing to do is to do our door swing itself. So I'm going to go to my circle tool, and I'm going to go once here and come up to the top of the door. So it's an 820 radius. Click again, and that's it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go polyline again, PL. And this time I'm going to start from down here, and I'm going to draw down 45 mil. Why 45? Half of 90, and remember this door starts halfway in between halfway between the wall. In layman's terms, it's more complex than that with door jambs and whatnot, but just for simplistic sake. So I'll come down 45, and this time I'm going to project out, instead of 50 mil, I'm going to make it 40 mil. Then I'm going to come up 90 mil, and then go in, and then down, and we're complete. Then I'm just going to copy this across, CO. And I'm going to take this point here and come across to here where it intersects with the arc. Hit escape a couple times, and now we're back to where we were before, where we can trim these items. So I'm going to go TR for trim, enter. I'm going to zoom right in, and I can see where the arc comes through the door jamb, because there's my straight line for the door jamb. So I'm going to click here and get rid of that line, get rid of that line, and zoom right in here and get rid of that line. Come out, hit escape a couple times, and now we have a much more accurate 820 door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this measure tool. I'm going to click on the little drop down box and go distance. And I'm just going to go from here to here. I can see that's 820. From there to there. Whoop, a little bit less than. That's okay. Let's go from Okay, so the radius is still 820. That's the bit that I care about the most, is the door radius itself is 820. That's fine. Okay, I'm going to select all of these objects, go move, and I'm going to click on this bottom point here as the base point. And I can't move it back to the 0, 0 point. So let's just go 0, dash 0, comma 0. Click on base point. Okay, so I've clicked on the base point here and then clicked on this corner of the door here, and then I'm going to say close block editor, and I'm going to say save the changes to the block, and there's our new door, and there's the base point still in that corner location there. We now have a much cleaner 820 door. So that's editing a block on the run. The next few items that I've added since the last class is the boundary line, and the boundary line can be seen in the example set just here. This dot dash line here, and this denotes the property boundary. So this shed is obviously, this workshop's probably in the back corner of the site, I would say, and we can see it's offset here. So the site boundary is 1,000 or 1 meter off of this wall here, between there and there, and it's 1830 on this side between the external wall and the property boundary, which most likely is a fence. So we don't know how far to draw this line yet because we haven't actually put it on a sheet, but we can at least start that process. The other thing to look at is a section marker. So we're not going to draw the section marker yet, but we are going to look at where the section marker is, which is through the window and then through to the other side. And that's important to note because if it's not through that window, we wouldn't be seeing the section cut through the window over here in the section view. So I'm going to go back to AutoCAD. First things first, these lines here, I'm going to remove them. And you can see where I've got a couple of poor reference planes. I'm going to get rid of those. And I'm going to go again, line. And I am just going to draw over this wall. And I'm going to do something like that. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. You might still have your reference lines or your guidelines or your reference planes, whichever way you want to call them, from the last class. I'm just going to highlight this and move this over. I think it was 1830. And this one, move up 1,000. Okay, so there we have it. Next up, I'm just going to go to my layers, and I'm now going to choose a bound 50. Double click on that, which now has a 0.5 mil boundary line. And I'm going to go polyline. I'm going to start from down here, come up to here, and then come out to some arbitrary number. There's no number to this. I'm just sort of, it's about 10 meters long. Click, hit escape a couple times, and we're now done. The last thing to do with the floor plan for now is, the second last thing is the section line. So I've decided just to use a guideline again. So I'm just going back to my guideline or my reference planes, whichever one you want to call it. And I'm going to hover my mouse over the middle of this window and just drag up. I can then click on that line, click on this middle point, drag it down to the mid, and I've got something like that. Now, that's for no other reason other than just a guideline at the moment. That line really doesn't mean anything, but we can come back to it. The last thing that I've done in the floor plan since the last class is drew in this staircase. So the staircase is done using a Pen 9 tool. So I'm going to go back to my properties manager and go to my Pen 9, double click on that, and then it was simply just drawing two polyline rectangles. Each of them, let's see how thick they are. One step is 250 mil, which makes sense. That's the Australian or the National Construction Code requirement. So 2 steps at 250 mil each, and then I just simply have a pen 9 line for the arrow, and then the arrow head is thicker, and that's using an A pen 50. Moving on to the section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these lines, and I'm just going to go copy. And I'm just going to copy this over to the side. And this is where we can get a little bit sketchy here. I'm going to remove these boundary lines. Okay, so it looks something like this. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate the entire floor plan. So I'm going to go rotate. Doesn't matter where I click, really doesn't. And rotate this up 90 degrees. So it looks something like this. we're going to go back to our guidelines layer, and we're going to start just drawing a bunch of guidelines to match these two things up. So how we get a section from the plan is we start with our knowns. We know a few things about this drawing that will help us with our guidelines. So I'm going to use the line tool, and I'm just going to start drawing up at some arbitrary number. There's no dimension here because, again, these are just guidelines. And you can see just one reference line after another. Center of the roof, inside wall, outside wall. Even the overhangs are very helpful, like so. Okay, so we've got our vertical, we're essentially projecting vertically, and this gives us a big, this definitely helps. So what we've done, if I open up our section, what we've done there is essentially drew these lines here. We've also got the center point of the roof, and we even have the roof overhangs as well. Now, what do we know about essentially the horizontal plane and the heights of those? Well, we know that we have an FFL. FFL stands for finished floor level, and we know that sits at a place in space. We don't know what that is yet, but there's a couple other things that we do know. We know that the roof, the ceiling, is going to be 2.4 meters. So again, you offset that 2.4. We know that generally speaking, that if you do have a window, you're usually allowing in a 2.4 ceiling around 300. Most doors and windows sit at a head height of 2.1 meters, give or take, standard. So we know there's a couple of heights that we have. We know that the roof pitch is going to be at a 22-degree angle. That definitely helps. And we can sort of work out the rest as we go along. So let's go back to CAD, and I'll keep sketching some of this in. So I'm just going to go a reference line across here like that. And again, using the offset tool, I'm going to go 2.4. So there's our ceiling height. I'm going to draw a smaller reference line, but I'm going to hover my mouse over this wall and come down 300, and then just draw across, and I'll go like this, and that's where I know the top of my window is. And how high is my window? I can take a look at the drawings and we can find that out. So if I go to our window, our last page of our drawing set, I can see that our total window height is 1,140 or 1.14 meters. So I'm going to come up here, and I've got this reference plane, so I'll just offset that the same dimension, which was 1140. So I'll come back to here, offset 1140 downwards, and there we go. Next thing to do is I'm just going to draw a line which is really long. I'm going to go like this, and I might draw it to be, say, 6 meters. And then I'm going to hit tab on my keyboard and go 22. So I've got a line that's 6 meters long, and I've specified that the angle is 22 degrees, and hit enter. And that's basically it. Now, what I can do is I can move this line to be with the center of the building. So I know there's my center line of the building. Next thing is to understand where it intersects with this angle here. So I need it to intersect with this intersection. So I'll click on this line. And the best way to do this is I can just grab this midpoint of the line and come down to here, like so. And there's my roof angle. Now, you can go the other way if you want, but a tip and trick for you, in this case, the roof is symmetrical, so we'll work on the roof in a bit, but the truss is symmetrical. So really, all we got to do is model one side, and then just use the mirror command, it over, and that's all our work done in a much shorter period of time. Now we can see here that seeing the drawings, we can see that our FFL is 23 meters above, is our NGL, or natural ground level, is 22,460. Now these can be datums. That's a bit of a different thing to go through in your working drawings class, in your surveying class. But for now, let's just figure out that we'll understand the point that this is 460 millimeters, 2.24, and then this is 2300. So we can work out the difference from here. And that is the height from the top of our finished floor level to our natural ground line. Now, natural ground lines are rarely just straight, but for argument's sake here, that's how we're intending to do it. We'll come back to the subfloor region in a bit. Let's work on above the subfloor, from the finished floor up. So the next thing I'm going to look at is creating a block for our stud wall. So our stud cuts look something like this, where you've essentially got a rectangle with a thick line, and then you've got a cross for the timber section itself. So in order to do that, this is very, very simple. I'm going to just start with a pen 35. So I'm going to go a pen 35, and I'm just going to go polyline across 90, down 45, across 90 and up. And then I'm going to go back to my line tool, not polyline, just line, and use my pen 9. I'm just going to go from one corner to another and one corner to another. I'm just using my normal pen tools here and not associating them with a certain layer because it's just easier that way. I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to go block. I'm going to call this stud underscore 90 by 45 millimeter. Pick the insertion point, we'll pick the base point, and I'm going to pick again one of these corners and click OK, and we're now done. There's our block for our timber stud. Now, even as this currently stands, we can start to get an idea of how this is going to look. I'll show you. So I'm going to move this stud in between that there. Okay, we know that's our window, so I'm going to start copying this, or I could even use the insert tool. I can go insert, insert, and there's my block, there's my stud, and I can move this around. This is not going to work perfectly though, because the base point is below the corner, not above, and in this instance there's a stud just below the sill. But what I can do is I can just hover my mouse over this area and then start to move my mouse down. I haven't clicked on anything, but just type in 45, hit enter, and I know that now sits in the right area. I could now copy this across. There are so many different ways I could do this. Copy this across and put it as the header above the window. I need one as well at the top of the stud, at the top of the stud wall. So I'm going to go copy. This time I'm going to copy it from the top, go across like that, come across the other side like so. Next one I want to do is halfway down the walls, but I don't know the height of this wall yet. Well, I know it's 2.4, but we haven't drawn the outside lines yet, so I'm going to come back to that. But I am going to grab this stud and just go mirror, M-I-R, hit enter. I'm going to find the center line, click on the center line and move my mouse down and click again. And it says here, would you like to erase the source object, which means get rid of the original one that I was mirroring. In this instance, I'm going to keep it to no, just hit enter, and now the command's done. That's mirrored across. Still might be hard for you to see how this is coming together, but we'll continue to work through this. The one thing I want to verify is the stud arrangement. So the top of the stud wall has double studs, and you've got a stud and a lintel above the window. So we need to do some rotating there too. So first things first, we're going to click on this stud and this stud. I'm going to go copy. I'm going to click once, click twice, and I've done it for both studs. So there we go there. One more, I'm going to copy this one. I'm just going to copy it up to there. Then what I'm going to do is click on this stud and go rotate. I'm going to click here and just move it up. And now I've rotated that stud, but now I do need to move it back to there. Starting to come together. Okay. Next up is a lot of reference plane, offsetting to give us the truss that we want, and also give us our external walls. So let's start with just the external walls. Okay, I'm going to go PL for polyline, and I'm going to change my layer to my pen 18, so A pen 18, and I'm simply just going to trace around these walls like so. One rectangle there. And in this case, well, I think it's the same layer. Slightly different. Actually, it is slightly different because these are pen 25. My bad. I'm sorry. So pen 25, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. Polyline pen 25. Actually, I'm going to go through the layer property manager. Double click on a pen 25, and let's do that again. Okay, so I've got one above the window, but I haven't done the window area because that's its own block. And I'm going to do the same thing underneath here. Something that looks like that. Okay. Now, I just want to make sure that that is indeed... I think that's actually a pen 18. Yeah, it's a pen 18, not 25. Okay, I'm going to check. This is easy to change. I'm just going to click on these yellow polylines and change that back to a pen 18. That makes sense because the drawing's not that big of a scale. Okay. So from here, we've got our stud walls on both sides. We can finish off our stud section by copying one of these stud sections and copying it from the midpoint of the stud on the outside, on the inside or outside, doesn't matter, and just hovering over the wall until we find the midpoint. So that's why we needed those red lines that actually showed the stud and projection, because these guidelines, they're different heights. They're not the height, so we don't know where they were going to be placed. Whether with the red lines, we know that we were going to snap to the midpoint of the stud as where the nogging should be. Okay, next up is to sort of trace over these trusses. So again, I'm going to use just a line, and I'm going to start with an A pen 18, and I'm just using just a standard line. I'm going to go from this point down to this point, hit spacebar, and now it's just a lot of offsetting. So I'm going to start by offsetting this down, offset down, and I'm going to go 90 mil for the top chord of the truss. Okay. Next up, I'm going to draw again, and I'm going to go from the midpoint across to the intersection of the top chord of the truss. So this is the bottom chord of the truss. Click again and offset 90, which is already there. Hit enter, move my mouse above, and so I've got something like this. Okay, so we have our top chord of our truss and our bottom chord of the truss simply by drawing just two lines and offsetting them 90 mil. I just want to verify what the bracing looks like. So you have this bracing that comes down the middle of the truss and then off to either side. Now I get the feeling that is not at 45 degrees. That's probably at 30 degrees, or it could even be at 22 as well. In fact, it maybe is at 22, the same as the angle of the top chord. So what I'll do there is I'm just going to draw a line, and I'm going to draw a line from going down the middle, and I'm going to just move this one side to 45 mil. Now the reason being is when we mirror this over, you'll get your 90 mil bracing in the center. Next up is I'm going to just draw from this angle out to here, and you can see it's snapping at an angle of 150. Or what I could do is just hover my mouse out here somewhere, hit tab, and go 22 degrees, and hit enter. Thing is though, as you can see, it's sort of flicked it around to the other side. So what I need to do is mirror this. So I'm going to click on this and go mirror, click on the base point and go the other direction. And do I want to erase the source object? Yeah, in this case I do. I don't want to keep that original line. So I can either hover my mouse over and click the S button, or I could just type in Y on my keyboard and hit enter, and it deletes the other one. Again, I'm going to hover over, I'm going to select this line and go offset 90 mil, hit enter, and go the other way. So at the moment this looks like, again, just a whole lot of lines just smashing everything all over the joint. We just need to clean some of this up now. So what I am going to do is I'm going to use another tool called extend, and what we need to do is get this line to meet up with the edge over here. So, which is our guideline, that is our roof overhang. You can see our roof overhang there, and our bottom chord of the truss needs to protrude out and get to this line here. So I'm going to use the command extend, and it's saying here, select the objects to extend. So this is the object to extend, and you can see there that it's picking up already where the nearest next line that it can extend to. So I click once, hit escape, and we're done. We've extended that line. Next up is a bit of trimming, but to clean this up a bit, I'm going to turn off my reference planes, or my reference lines. Click on the little light bulb, and let's have a bit of a clean up here. So I'm going to go trim, enter, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that, that, and that. And something along those lines looks good to me. Let's just double check the reference drawings. Well, in fact, they did keep that line. So let's do that again. Trim, get rid of that. I'm going to keep these two here because we're going to need them because the middle line is through there. So I'm going to escape. Let's close this off. Okay. That's half our truss. Now, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a line here. And the reason why I'm doing that is so I can just clean this up a little bit. There we go. So I know when I mirror this over, it's going to be perfectly symmetrical on the other side. In fact, even if I just test that, I need to get rid of these. Yep, that looks pretty good. But I'm not quite ready yet. So I'm going to bring this back to here. We've got a little bit more work to do. The next thing that we need to do is build our roof bearers. So what we're going to do there is, first I'm going to turn back on my guidelines just for clarity. Okay, so we've got something that looks like this. Getting there. We're going to build another stud. So I'm going to go back to my A-pen 35. And this time, what I'm going to do is go 90, but this time by 35 mil. So 90 by 35 instead of 90 by 45s for my roof bearers. Okay. Okay, so I go my 9. And then block. And this will be stud underscore 90 by 35 mm. The base point will still be that corner. And now we're done. Now our roof battens will have a certain pattern. So what I'm going to do is, let's see how we go with this. I think I'm going to start up here somewhere. And first thing I'm going to do is rotate this. So I'm going to rotate this by going RO, enter, click the base point of this corner. And you can see as I follow this line here, it basically snaps to those 22 degrees. So I can hit OK or hit just click to complete the command. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this down to this intersection. So it's right at the apex. And let's see how we go. I'm going to start arraying them from here, but I might move this along. So rather than just going, I could just go copy, and I could go from center to center. I can click on this line, find their guideline, come down and go 450 and do something like that. And then 450 again and keep going. That's very time consuming, just a bit of a waste of time. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to go array. I'm going to click enter. And this time I'm going to say it's going to be following a path. So I'm going to click on path, and the path to follow is this red line here. It's the top quarter of the truss. So when I do that, see immediately it's copying all of those, or arraying all of those trusses or all those roof battens across the truss. Now, we don't need it to look like that. But what we can look at is the array creation tab that's now opened up. And the ribbon, what we want to look at here is the distance between them. Okay, so we have one row, which is fine. And the distance between the row, well, that's actually null and void. It's the distance between the columns, because these are columns essentially. So 144 is the current distance. If we say 450, you'll see it extends out. And the brilliant thing is because we selected that red line, it basically distributes them across that red line at 450 centers. It doesn't take it for as far as the eye can see. If we didn't choose that path, that red line, which starts here and ends here, AutoCAD would have just kept it going indefinitely. So I'm actually pretty happy with the way that's come across. So I'm just going to click on Close Array, and we're done with that. What I might do though, is I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go Move, because it picks up the whole group of the arrayed items. And I'm just going to move this down from here. Oh, associated array has been moved from its path curve. What do you want to do? I'm going to say Continue. And I'm going to move this down 45 mil, like so. That way that it's just a little bit more realistic. You don't need the roof batten right at the apex, but you do want one closer to the edge where the gutter is. So there's our roof battens done and dusted. The next one is our roof sheet itself. Now, at this point, we're still doing a section, so we don't need ultimate amount of detail. So we're just going to use a 0.25 line. So I'm going to go my line tool. I'm going to go 0.25, a pen 25, and I'm just going to go from here down to about here, and then hover my mouse over and then click. Okay, so there's my roof. There's my roof sheet. Now I still need to extend this out the other way, so I'm going to use my extend tool, hit enter, click on that line, the yellow line, done. There's my roof sheet. Now we do need one other block to draw, which is our fascia board. Okay, so I'm going to go PL. And I'm going to make sure I'm in a pen 3.5. And that fascia board is going to be a pretty standard fascia board, which is 235 mil long and 35 wide. And then up. And then again using my A pen 9 and just my line tool, doing the cut, the cross. Like so. Now I can block this if I like. Because there's only 2 instances of this, let's not block it, just to change it up. I'm going to go Move, and I'm just going to place that fascia board like so. Now, I think the fascia board should be moved up slightly, but let's just take a look at our reference drawing. No, that isn't the case. So it just comes down and meets it right there. The last thing to add is the gutter, and that is available in the resources folder under Assessment Task 1 in Student Web. That block you can just download from there. So that block that is available in Student Web is a Lysard block, which is just a standard box gutter, quad gutter. These are available all over the internet from different manufacturers, but this is a pretty poor example of a CAD block, to be honest. You'll notice that each one of these is a tiny little line that makes up this block. So it's not really a block, it's just a CAD file with a bunch of lines in here. So let's clean this up before we bring it into our file, okay? I'm gonna just highlight all the lines in this file, and I'm gonna type in join. And that's now joined them all into one continuous polyline. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna give this some thickness. So I'm gonna go offset, and call it 1 mil, and I'm going to go inside 1 mil. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to close these lines up. I can do that with a fillet. I can try that. I can just go from one to the other. Maybe not, won't work. Let's go fillet again. I'm going to go R, radius, enter, and go 1, and go from one to another. No, still not going to work. It's too small and we're not going to notice it in the drawing. So why don't we just close it up with just a straight line. And I'll do the same on the other side. Okay. Last step, let's take everything and join it again. So now it's one continuous polyline, the entire object. Now this is on layer 0 currently, and I don't like that. Definitely doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Control C. I'm going to go back to our project of today. Control V, and there's our box, there's our quad gutter. Okay, something like that. Now again, this is just a bunch of lines. It's not a block, so that's fine. But what I am going to do is click on it and change its layer to A pen 25. Okay, something looks like that. The last thing I need to do is mirror that the other way, because we're working on the left-hand side. And I'm just going to draw straight up. Do I want to delete the source object? No, actually I probably should have. I'm just going to delete that. Okay, so I'll take this quad gutter and I'm just going to move this into place. Roughly speaking, because we're still early days yet on our detailing. Okay, so it looks like that. And we're pretty much done now with the roof. So all we need to do is, I'm going to turn off those guidelines. Okay, that looks good. And I'm going to select all of these items here that make up the roof structure. So I'm going to go from left to right. And then what I'm going to do is I need to deselect these two studs. So in order to do that, if I accidentally select something I don't want, I can also hold down Shift and then click on the object, or I can even hold down Shift and go use a selection box. So now I've just got the roof. The final step is to go Mirror, hit Enter, go from the center point of the roof, just click up, click again. Do I want to erase the source object? No, and that's already highlighted, so Enter. And there's our roof structure complete. Not too hard at all. So let's focus on the subfloor region now, and we'll worry about the window shortly as well. I'm going to turn back on my reference planes. Okay, and we can play around with this a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go polyline. I'm going to start from this corner underneath this stud. I'm going to go right across the floor to the other side underneath the stud. I'm going to draw down 19 mil for 19 mil tongue and groove flooring, and then go back the other way, and then back up. Hit spacebar or enter or escape, and the command's done. Now I need to put down the right layer. That should be on pen 19, or sorry, pen 18. Okay, and that's our subfloor. That's our flooring that we actually step on. We then need to go PL again for another polyline. I'll make sure I'm on the right layer this time. And I'm going to go from here down 90 mil. Across, up, and across again. So now what we do have is our joists, our timber joists. So we're seeing the joists in projection, and we're going to see the bearers in section. Okay. Now we know that from this point here, the finished floor level, we have an offset of 540 mil, which is the ground level. So between here is our natural ground level up to the finished floor where you would actually stand if you were standing inside of this building. Okay. We have to consider what type of stumps that we're using as well. Chances are these are probably like 150 mil wide stumps, 150 by 150. They could be 100 by 100, but let's say it's 150 by 150. And then the stump goes into the ground. We don't know exactly how much that is, but I can find out. It's probably going to be around 850 odd mil, thereabouts, plus some dimensions for the actual excavation as well, before we get to hatching. So let's continue on with this. Okay, so we'll go back to here. I'm going to pick up the studs like we've used before. I'm going to go copy. I'm just going to go from here to here. And I need to turn those studs around. So I'm going to go from this corner like so. And then click on this bearer and move that up. And I don't need to mirror that yet, but I will copy it from the center point to the center point of the building. So there are our bearers in section. I'm not going to do the right hand side yet because I can just copy the left hand side and mirror it across. The central one has to be done individually because, well, as the name implies, it's centered, so that's okay. So next up, let's take a look at how to do the stumps. So again, using my pen 18, I'm going to use a polyline. I'm going to start from this outside corner. I'm going to come across, and we're going to go across 100. So 100 by 100 stumps. And I'm going to go down 850. So into the ground 850, come across 100, and then back up to the top again and hit enter. So that's our stump. This is our natural ground line, don't forget. So why don't we, while we're here, why don't we just change this to pen 70, nice thick line, just to make it, just to change it up, okay? So we know for sure that is our natural ground line. All right. Next up, we need to do some excavating under here. So in order to do that, I am going to just highlight my building, my floor plan, and I'm just going to move that down. Remember, this is reference anyway. In fact, that will eventually be deleted. But once I do that, you can really start to see this section is definitely starting to come together. So I'm going to now, I'm going to turn off my reference planes, I reckon. I don't need them anymore, not for now. This is looking good. I'm going to go to my A pen 9. So A pen 9. And we're going to do some work around here. So let's go from this point. I'm going to come out 100 mil. So 100. I'm going to go down 800. I'm going to go across. In this case, it'd be 300. And then back up to the top. Across. And I'm actually going to follow this bearer, this stump, across like that. So I'm actually going to follow the full contour. So in isolation, it looks like this U shape. And the reason why I've done that is for hatching, and I'll show you what that means a little bit later. Last thing we need to do is add a couple of lines. So I'm going to go to my line tool. I'm going to start down here. I'm going to hover my mouse up. I'm going to type in 50 and then come across one way. And then I can just copy this across. Again, this is for hatching purposes. So what I've done, if I show you the example, and I zoom right in, I've cleaned this up a little bit. So we've got our stump there that we've just been working on. Then this was the excavation line that we were working on before. So this is where you would actually dig out the hole for the stump. And then that little 50 mil up and then the 100 mil across, that's for our concrete pad footing. Then the backfill goes in here around the actual excavation area around the stump. That's what we've done. We're not going to hatch this yet, but we'll come to the hatching shortly. But what we can do now is, now we've completed this sub footing, we can mirror this across, and we can also copy it across and just do some adjustments so it works for the middle as well. Again, we won't hatch them yet. We'll do that a little bit later. Okay, so we've got this. We can essentially take all of these elements. I can go mirror, and we know that this bearer here is the middle of the building, so I can just go like that. Do I want to erase the source object? No. In fact, I forgot to mirror the bearer as well. Okay, so something like that. Now finally, let's just take one of these, and we're just going to go copy, and I'm going to make sure I pick the middle of this red line, which is the middle of the stump. Click on the middle of the stump to the middle of this bearer, and that's our sub footings complete. Almost, just got a little bit more to go. Now the reason why I'm not going to do the hatching yet is because we want to see this on the paper to make sure that we've got the right amount of hatching covered, that we haven't got too much cut off or not enough filled in. The last thing to do is the window. Now we can do this window in a myriad of different ways, but it's very similar to the floor plan and the way that it will look in elevation or in section, at least in this instance. So I'm going to go to my Win18. I'm going to go polyline. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, I'm going to offset, come down 50 mil, like so. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Start down here, just hovering my mouse over there. I haven't clicked anything. Move my hand up this line, type in 50, and then across, and then one line between there, and there's our window. Now I want to double check that's how it was done. Yeah, looks good. In fact, here the windowsill is less than 50 mil, so we might do the same thing. Especially when we look at the detail. If we go to the details, we can see what that looks like. So you can see that you definitely detail this up a lot more in terms of what this windowsill looks like. Though I think the 50 mil is probably appropriate. So I'm going to leave ours at 50 mil. And that's our geometry done for our section. The next component will be how we transfer a section into elevations. With a section done, the process to draw the elevations is actually easier than the process we went through for the section. But it all starts again with extrapolating the guidelines from known points in space that we have now confirmed through detailing up the section. So I'm going to go to my guidelines layer. Okay, and let's start again extrapolating some of these curves, some of these lines. So we know that's the top. What we're going to be looking at now is we've got our ceiling line, And our ceiling line happens to be the top of the fascia board, so that's good. So let's extend some of these out. So let's go with our top of our fascia board, extend that right out. Our finished floor level, extend that right out. And there's a couple of other things that we could be doing here too. So we'll take the peak of our roof, and I'll extrapolate that out. We have our ground, our finished, our natural ground level. And then a couple of other things is around like window heights. So I'm going to draw this across. And then the top of our window height. Draw that across. And the bottom side of our fascia board, draw that across as well. So at the moment it looks like a bit of a mess, if anything. Doesn't look like too much is going on. But what we can do as well is we can copy the outside of this section and pull it across to detail. Or we could start again from the start. There is a multitude of different ways we could do it. Let's start by copying that section across. So I'm just going to go across over here. I don't really mind how this is looking at the moment, but what I can do is start to delete these items. So we no longer need that, no longer need the tongue and groove. All of these timber studs can essentially go. All of that can go. So there's a lot of deleting going on currently, and same with the roof truss, because essentially all we need is just the outline. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the bottom of the top quarter of the truss, so it looks something like this. Okay, so we're getting closer, but what we've got to do as well is remove the roof battens. The gutter should still definitely be there, so I'm just going to mirror that back across. I'm going to get rid of those items. And let's go back and take a look at our reference set of drawings. Okay, so there's sort of our top quarter of the truss, where really it's like a fascia board, but we'll just use the same line, stick a line on top. That's relatively simplistic, and then we can work on the window as well. Having said that, doesn't really matter. We can just copy these across. Once you do one elevation, you've got the other elevation taken care of. So what I am going to do is I'm going to take these lines here. In fact, this one here I'm going to delete. I'm going to turn off the reference planes line just for ease of use, and I'm going to go to my APen 50 layer. I'm going to turn off the guidelines. Okay, so it looks something like this. And I'm going to highlight these two walls that are polylines, and I'm going to type in the command explode. That changes those back to individual lines, which then means that we can delete other components of those lines that we no longer need. So in our case, that means these lines. So we're just left with the outermost line of the wall, like so. I'm going to use the command extend that up, extend that up, like so. Okay, that looks all pretty good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this a little bit further down, so the fascia board should be a little bit longer. So that's currently 90 mil from the top down. So let's offset again, and maybe let's say 200, and I'll offset that down like so. Let's just eyeball this and see how that looks. Yeah, it's not too bad. Maybe it doesn't need to be 200. Maybe let's go a little bit less. So I'll click on these two items and we'll do the same thing again, and we'll offset, but let's offset, say, 135. And I'll delete these two lines here. Trim. Okay, looking pretty good. These fascia boards here, they're not being cut in elevation anymore, so these don't have to be thick lines. So I'm going to get rid of the cross and I'm going to change this to a pen 18. Use the extend command to there. Do the same on the other side. Extend to there. Get rid of those lines. Change these to a pen 18. And trim. And that's basically one of our first elevations done. The last thing I have to do is draw the ground line. So if I turn on my reference lines again, I'll see the ground line will appear. So I need to go to my A pen 70. And I'm just going to generically draw a line somewhere from here to about here. There's no exact distance. It's just, it is what it is at the moment. And then for one more time, extend these lines. Objects to extend. What I need to do is get rid of the reference layer. And again, extend that line down to there, that line down to there. And that is our first elevation minus the window, which I'll come back to shortly. And you'll notice we have our stairs as well, just there in projected and elevation. Okay, so we've been able to extrapolate an elevation from the section. That's easy enough. Oh, we've got one more item to trim. The next item is to look at the window that would go in this elevation. So to do that, I'm going to take this floor plan. I'm going to copy it across. Make sure I copy it to the center point of this floor plan, just like so. And I am going to rotate this around the center. So I'm going to go rotate, click the midpoint, and then just type in 180. So why have I done that? That's just so when I turn back on my reference lines, I can project the opening of the window up to this point. So I'm going to grab my reference lines layer, or guidelines, and I'm going to make sure I'm going from the opening of the window up, and opening of the window up, like so. Now, in actual fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flick this back around 180 degrees, and the reason for it will become evident in a second. So let's say that I am actually standing here, and I'm looking at the building in that direction. Okay, something like that. The window will be shown here. As you can see, there's the window location there. But the stairs would be on the right-hand side because you would be looking at the building and the stairs would be on the right-hand side. So that's why I flicked it back around. The only difference is these guidelines, if I was to draw it that way, I'd have to draw them all the way back to here, which is not really a problem, but anyway. Okay, so the window itself, let's go through modeling that up as a block. So I'm going to go to my A-Win-18, so our Windows layer. There it is there. And I'm going to start with just a polyline. I'm going to go from this bottom corner up, across, down, and across again. So it looks something like that. Now, I am not confident that this is actually the right size, and this is good to see. Again, this is good experimentation. So I'm going to click on this reference line, and I'm going to offset that 1150 downwards. And you can see there, we're slightly off the mark in our elevation. And I could tell that that was the issue because when I was drawing this line up, I noticed that from this guideline to this guideline here was a very odd number. In fact, if I do that again, and I go from here to here, it's giving me a dimension of 131.135.8454. Very arbitrary number. So what I'm going to do is let's just fix this up. I'm going to get rid of this line. I'm going to click on this guideline. And I'm going to offset it down 1150 further down. I need to quickly amend this section as well. Offset down, same distance. And then just move the stud wall down. And there's my window. I can drag that down. And there we go. So now we know that window is the correct size, 1195. And so for this polyline I just drew, I could delete it and redraw it, or a quick way to edit this is click on one of the middle grip in the middle of the bottom part of the rectangle, click and just move down, and that's clean. That's cleaned up that rectangle for us. All right, next thing I'm going to do is offset this for a frame. So I'm going to offset this this polyline 30 mil, and it's going to be 30 mil internally, and then we're going to offset it again, but this time I'm going to offset it 20 mil. So it looks something like that. So we have our outer frame and our inner frame. Then what I'm going to do is take a line, and I'm just going to find the midpoint of the innermost component of the frame. So it looks something like that. And I'm going to offset that, say, 20 mil up and 20 mil down. Now I want to verify that this looks something like the example. And yes, it does. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to add in some arrows as well. So I'm going to go an arrow, and I'm going to use some guides for that. So I'm going to come down here 200, and then a guide back at 45, or actually I'll do it at 30 degrees, and I'll make that 200. And I'll mirror that. So a lot of mirroring I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to move this up 50 mil. Yep. I'm going to take this and I'm going to mirror the whole thing from the center of the window. So it's like that. And so what we're saying is that these are sash windows that can move in either direction. Don't worry about the line weights too much for now. I'm going to delete that middle component of the window. And that's our window family, or our window block, completed in pretty rough terms. So the last thing to do is to block it. So I'm going to select all of those lines, go block, then go window underscore, in this case this is a 900 by 1150 mm dash plan. No, this is elevation. Pick the base point, which again will be a bottom corner, and then OK. And now we have our block, which is our window. The last thing to do is our stairs, and so I'm going to use a pen 9 for this one, and this is relatively easy, pen 9, and I've got like some guidelines here, so I can see there's my staircase there from the floor plan. Come up, I know that this is my finished ground, my finished floor level, so I'm going to come across 250 mil, and then I'm just going to come down like so, and I'll trim that off. I think this should look a little bit different. We can come back to that and fix that one up later. Alright, so I'm going to turn off my reference layers, and you can see we've got the beginnings of our first elevation. We'll have to hatch this, but I'll come back to hatching in a second. What you can do then is as simple as just copying and pasting this across for your other elevation, removing the window, taking the stairs and mirroring them from the center point of the building to the other side and saying, yes, I'd like to remove, because you're looking at the building from the other direction. It's that simple. Now for our other elevations, and we'll do the side with the door and the window, I'm going to turn back on my guides. And I'm also going to take this floor plan, I'm going to move it across, doesn't really matter where, and then rotate it. And this time I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Same thing again, I'm going to go onto my reference planes layer, or my guidelines layer, and again just start drawing up the screen. So that's the overhang of my building. These are the walls of my building. These are the openings to my windows. Straight up the page. And then the openings to the door. Something like this. Now this is not, at the moment doesn't look like too much, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a polyline. And I'm going to use my pen 18. I'm going to start drawing around the building. I know this is my finished floor level. So again, I'm going to go polyline, and I know that that is my door. And even for my window, I'm just going to copy it because it's the same block. So I'm going to go copy from this corner across to there. So I know there's my window. And then the last bit is my roof. So I've got a little bit more line work to do because I've got gutters and whatnot. So I need to do a couple of more reference lines. So I'm going to go back to my reference lines layer, and I've got the top of my fascia board. And I also have the gutter. So I need to express this gutter with a couple of projection lines as well. The bottom part of the gutter and the top part of the gutter. Now this might be a little bit confusing to track which line is what, and that's okay. So I'm going to go back to polyline, pen 18. Let's start in the top right hand corner of the roof. Come down to here. Across and up. Now this polyline I drew in the wrong place, so I'm just going to drag this back to there. Alright, so even if I turn off the reference lines, or the guidelines, you can very much see how we've been able to extrapolate an elevation using the projection from the section and the other elevations and the projection lines of the floor plan, extrapolating that up. This process is the same for basically any floor plan. I'll turn back on my reference planes layer, and I'm just going to play around with a couple of more lines around here. So I need a line for, that is the bottom of the gutter. And I need a line for the top of the gutter. And another line across there, which is like the fold in the gutter. So it looks like that. All right, and then I'm going to do another line across the top. And I'm going to click on that. So I've got two lines sitting over the top of each other, and I'm just going to move this down. Let's move it down 50 mil, like so. Okay. Then what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to change some of these lines, these two lines here. I'm going to change them to pen 09. And this line as well, I'm going to change that to a pen 09. Alright, so let's turn off our reference planes layer. So it looks something like this. And this time, I know I've got these guidelines here, but I'm going to delete them in a bit. I am going to create, using the door 18 layer, the door. So I'm going to go PL for polyline. I'm going to start in this bottom right hand corner, come around, up, across and down. And I'm going to click on Shift to get rid of that. So I've got the original polyline underneath, and delete that because I don't just want lines sticking on the top of each other for no good reason. All right, and then what I'm going to do is draw the door. So again, it's just an example, but I'm going to go offset. We'll do 50 mil. Click on the inside of the door, so it looks something like that. But of course, the door doesn't have a bottom sill like this. So I'm going to click on this inside line and type in explode. Delete that line, and again I'm going to go extend, and I'm going to extend these two internal lines down to the bottom, so that gives us our door jamb. And then pretty simply I'm going to use another polyline, and I'm going to go from this corner here to the middle part of the door and then down, and we've got something that looks like so. Now I just want to double check. Yep, that's basically all we've got there, so that looks good. The last thing to do is to add in the stairs. So the ground, stair 1, stair 2. So let's go back to AutoCAD. I'm going to use a different pen for this. I'm going to use pen 13. And I'm going to start off by just going from here straight down on both sides, just to the line. I'm going to then do a polyline. I'm going to come out, say, 18 mil. And then down, same on the other side, across 18 mil. And then down, and then we've got 540. So we've got a 540 gap between the finished floor and the natural ground line. So I'm just going to simply just divide that by 3, and I'm going to draw a line here. I'm going to move this down 180, and then copy or offset this one another 180 down. So it looks something like that. Okay, and that's our elevations almost done. And of course, the last elevation is the easiest one because it's just a copy of this elevation minus all of the items in there, like so. That's essentially what the last elevation looks like. I'm also going to make sure that I've got my A pen 70 as my thick ground floor, ground line. Like so, something that looks like that. So we've got the bulk of our drawings already done, section, plan, and elevations. I'm going to go through, in the next class, we'll go through hatching. And the reason why we'll wait for the next class to go through hatching is because we also have to look at sheets and making sure that the drawings are in the right area on our sheets, on our plot styles, before we go hatching them. So if we need to move drawings, especially if you hatch multiple regions at once, it's very hard to move one area without moving the entire hatching region. And that will become clearer in the next class.